You are now watching On Point, a news and public affairs show from California State University, Northridge.
Hello, and welcome to On Point. I'm your host, Miriam Frutos, and today we will discuss the importance of law enforcement and how the community feels about police creating events to connect with others. There have been some concerns about law enforcement in the past couple of years. According to U.S. data on police shootings and violence from the University of Chicago, 15% of civilians who experience police threats are injured. More than 600 people are killed by police each year. People of color face this issue the most. According to Statista.com, the rate of African Americans killed by police brutality is much higher, standing at 5.7 fatal shootings per million of the population between 2015 and 2023. Nowadays, law enforcement faces a problem of their reputation being tainted due to these circumstances. However, there are events in the community people can attend to discuss with police and have talks that will involve more trust. These events can create a common ground for the community and the police so that they can build a better trust. Today with me, I have Officer Gabriel Kearney. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
We were talking about these interactions that people have. You've been in the force for 26 years, correct?
Yes.
And you mentioned you were at LAPD in 2020. That was a crazy, rough year for everybody. And during that time, there were a lot of videos that surfaced about the type of interaction police have. However, that applies to those individuals, and it doesn't reflect the entire police department or police body, if we would want to say that. What are some interactions that you had during those times or during your career as a police officer?
So the way that policing has changed in the last 20 years has really sort of guided where we are today. For example, when I was a young policeman 25 years ago, we were told that when we made contact with somebody, we were to ask them to do something and then tell them to do something and then do that thing for them. So it was a very authoritarian and power-heavy way of interacting with the public. But over the decades, society has grown and changed. People's norms and how they think and how they want to be treated have become more transparent. We talk about it more, and policing has had to change in order to achieve our goal, which is public safety. So we've gone from that ask, tell, do model to de-escalation and community engagement, community policing. The first department that really sort of broadcast this idea was actually the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And they came up with a system called CAPRO, where we would first identify who our clients were, then identify what our problem was, then identify what partnerships we could make, and then react and then assess to see if we had done that. And it's a very different model from, I'm going to tell you to do something, right? We've gone from being kind of an occupying army, and we've turned into a community outreach program. And that's true of police work pretty much nationwide. That shift has been slow coming, but in the last 15 years or so, it's really become a much more prevalent way of training young officers, and then even more importantly, training officers who have been in the field for a period of time. For example, if you go into the police academy, I can tell you that this is the way you need to behave. I want you to do this, I want you to do that, maintain officer safety, but establish a rapport with who you're talking to. But then when you get out in the field and you're no longer in the safe confines of the police academy, people's minds start to shift. And then the I had to do this for officer safety mentality kicks in, and we get back into sort of a power-heavy policing style. One of the things that the LAPD started doing about 10 years ago was it was almost a second academy. We would take officers who had been in the field for 3 to 5 years, and we would bring them back for a 2-week training. And we would focus on, okay, now that you're out of the academy and you've seen police work in the real world, how can you create those partnerships? How can you focus on de-escalation instead of being heavy-handed? And there's been a greater emphasis on community outreach. I left the LAPD and came to CSUN to work for this police department because I wanted to be part of a community-based policing department that really stressed and valued the customer, the client, which is the students and faculty and staff here. And here at CSUN, for example, we do tabling events nearly every week where we come out and instead of talking about enforcement, we talk about bridging the gap. We talk about creating relationships and helping students and getting you guys, and by you guys I mean students, to the end goal. And the end goal is graduation day, right? We're here to make sure you get to that stage in that gown. And me running around and writing tickets and arresting people is not the way to do it. The way that we do it is through education and through creating a relationship where we are visible on campus 24 hours a day, but we are here to be a mentor. We are here to be an advocate. We're here to be guidance for students. And it's really rewarding, and at least for a guy like me, it's the right way to do police work, if that makes sense.
And you mentioned doing roundtables here at CSUN back in 2020. Because of all the commotion, there was a rally here at CSUN that was pushing to just abolish police on campus. Mm-hmm. What have you seen in the past couple of years that you've been here doing those roundtables? What attitudes have you seen from students? Have you had anybody who started off as a little bit skeptic as to you're being here on campus, and how has any of their minds changed at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember my first week here, I was walking the campus with the chief, and we came upon a group of students, men and women, and there was one young lady in particular who was kind of giving me side eye. And she looked very uncomfortable, and we were all just happened to be walking in the same direction past the Matador statue. And so I sped up a little bit, and I started walking next to her. And I just said, "Hey, good morning, how are you?" And she was a little standoffish. And I could see that, and I could see the rest of her group watching her. And so I just started a conversation. What year are you? Are you enjoying your time here at CSUN? I'm new here. If I wanted to eat someplace, where would I go? If I wanted to do something cool with students, where would I go? And I sort of fished her into a conversation because I could see that she was uncomfortable. And we only walked together for about 10 or 15 minutes. But at the end of that walk, she stopped and she turned around and she said, I saw a cop on campus and you made me uncomfortable. And I don't know that we're really going to be super tight if I see you again. But next time I see you, is it okay if I say hi? And for me, that was huge because she went from completely not trusting me to at least being open-minded to the fact that I might be a human being, I might be a normal person, and I might be an ally because I had treated her the same way. I humanized both of us.
And I really do think it's small interactions like that that help the community better understand and build those relationships. Our reporter Vanessa actually attended a Coffee with a Cop event earlier this week, and she's going to talk about what that was like.
Thank you, Miriam. I'm outside of Target at an event called Dine with a Deputy, where Palmdale, LA County Sheriff here are connecting with the community.
Officers see the worst of humanity every day. No one calls the police when things are going well. But by providing positive experiences through enrichment activities, communities could feel safer, and officers may be more resilient, culturally competent, and effective at decision making.
So lots of good stuff. So.
For the most part, it's just trying to bridge that gap so that we can have that open communication and be transparent and let them know that there is a human side to us.
Mutual trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve is critical to maintaining public safety. Community outreach by police departments is an effort to engage with community members proactively.
I had a baby brother, and he also got shot by gangster members back in 3 years ago in Little Rock. 5 years? It's going to be 5 years? Yeah, they killed him by gang members.
These outreaches develop a greater understanding between police and members of a diverse community.
Risk their lives every day to deal with these gang members.
Members of the community can help the police in their efforts by participating, donating to, or helping facilitate these events.
On Point, Vanessa Roque. Back to you, Miriam.
So I'm assuming the tables that you guys host are similar events to these. Do you bring any students to participate? Like here they mentioned that they have the community participate in creating the events. Is that something similar to what you do here?
We try to get involved in as many activities on campus as we can. Sometimes we host our own event where we will go to a career day, or we will put up a public safety display in the quad and say, hey, come and talk to us. Let's talk about how to register your bike, register your scooter, not get your laptop stolen. And those are driven by the department. But then we also rely heavily on associated students to invite us to things like new student orientation or parent orientation, where we have an audience that's not really there to see us, but we are still there as part of the group because we're all part of the same CSUN community. And we'll use those to our advantage as well. And those are great. Those are really fun. The downside is that the person who comes up to my tabling event and talks to me is the person who already feels a little comfortable with the police, right? I'm not reaching that person that really doesn't want to talk to me. And the best way for us to reach that person is just in our daily lives. As we patrol the campus, I try to walk the campus, and I stress to my officers, park your car, roll up your window, get out on foot and walk around and say hi to people. I certainly don't want our officers here creating distance between the students and the faculty and the staff. I want them closing that distance. I want them engaging. So really the most important thing that we can do is to go out and make those one-on-one conversations happen. And then the other part of it is radio calls. We are still a police department. We are still responding to people who are sometimes having the worst moment in their day, right? That's why people call the police. And these deputies actually mentioned two words that I think are super important. One of them talked about transparency, and the other one talked about being human, right? So that's something else that we really stress in our department. If I get a call and you need help, I need to treat you like a human being, and I need to behave like a human being. I can't be a robot, and you can't be a faceless victim or subject. And then the department also really does a lot to be more transparent. A large part of us garnering trust in the community is not putting up that wall, and people do this when they feel threatened, whether it's the police or businesses or individuals. If somebody challenges you and says, hey, I don't like what you're doing, the first thing that they do is become defensive. And police departments are notorious for doing that. We at CSUN DPS have our own transparency page. We created a web page that people could go to, and they can look at our crime trends. They can look at the demographics of the campus. They can look at the demographics of our department. They can look at uses of force. We try to share all of that so the community doesn't feel like we are hiding or not operating with full disclosure. And it's important because that's the way we build trust. If we say, hey, this is us, this is what we're doing, we're being open about it, and we welcome any input, good or bad, is fine because it starts a conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely having that trust between the two parties is definitely something that's very important. We're going to go on a short commercial break. When we come back, we will have an activist and the diversity and inclusion officer joining us. You're watching On Point. Welcome back to On Point. With me, activist Sennett and Officer Catarino Arias. You guys just saw a piece from one of our other reporters, Coffee with a Cop, Dine with the Deputy, which is a program that tries to bridge in communities together. In the past, we've seen a lot of negativity involving the police department. I'm sure you both have seen that online, TV as well. And I wanted to get both of your inputs. You mentioned you recently joined as the Division Director of Equity and Inclusion Officer. And Sennett, you've helped a lot of families that have gone through negative experiences. What are some of the experiences that you've helped with when it comes to police interactions?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, by the way, here. Some of the phone calls I get, they can range from, maybe minor things. Maybe someone was pulled over for nothing, and just was put in handcuffs and felt like, something was done wrong there. We've gotten the call when someone's been wrongfully incarcerated for several months or years. And additionally, we've gotten phone calls from parents who are grieving their child who was killed by police and really not sure where to go. There's unfortunately, when there's an issue or something arises in someone's home, we're pretty well trained to call 911 or expect police to come and help. And what happens when that becomes the problem in your life or the most traumatic event you've ever experienced? You typically are at a loss of what to do next. And so we've tried to provide resources, attorney representation sometimes. Sometimes it's like literally just an ear or ability to share their story. As a community, I think we've all wanted transparency, and like body camera footage or body cams has been something I think people have been advocating for. But again, unfortunately, when you're a victim of some of these police brutality issues, you never see that footage. The footage only comes out when the police want you to see it. And so a lot of times these families are coming to me and saying, please share this video that really explains what's going on and what happened with my son or with my parent and the police.
And then now I'm sure there's protocol to release video, whether it be from a store to body camera, anything like that. It's not that anybody's withholding information or those videos. What are some things that you would want to tell the community when they're requesting body footage or anything like that and they can't get it right away?
So, one of the things that I would like to say is thank you for having us here. I think this is a very important topic to discuss. And also, to be clear, I'm not a police officer. I was hired by the Department of Police Services as a civilian employee, as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And Sennett mentioned a couple of things that my work will be part of bettering, and that's the interactions that we have with our CSUN community. There's absolutely a lot of work that needs to be done, but in my work, what I'm going to be focusing on is making sure that the community as a whole understands that if there's a discomfort with coming to the police when they need assistance, if there's questions that can't be asked because of things that have happened in the past, either to students, faculty, or staff, or even the community outside of CSUN, that I'm there as a resource to be able to make sure that internally that we're dealing with police work through engagement, through equity, through care, and also by making sure that we're engaging the community as a whole. In terms of the question that you asked, unfortunately, I can't answer that specific question because, again, I'm not a police officer. I'm more a liaison between DPS and the entire community of CSUN. I look at my work as part of what I hope is something new that we do internally in police work, because he did mention several things that I agree with completely, that many times there are experiences that don't allow for people to reach out to police. And we want to make sure that students, staff, and faculty, again, feel safe on campus. But we have to do the internal work as well. So whenever I'm going out and I'm engaging and doing outreach, I have to bring that information back internally, because without internal means of addressing the issues that the community is pointing out, there's no progress. And we're still going to have a disengagement that needs to be addressed, because we want to be part of the community. We need to be involved. DPS can't just be that building in the corner that's doing police work. We have to go beyond that, and we have to show care. We have to show interest, and we also have to show that we are there for all the groups on this campus. And it's not easy work to do, but I'm here because I believe that I can make a difference.
And then you mentioned that you're taking what's going on, we're learning from it, we're trying to improve on it. What are some things, if you're able to share, some of the steps that CSUN is taking to kind of bridge that gap?
Sure. Well, one of the big topics that I've heard over the 5 weeks that I have been here is student success, and I believe that that's part of my work, that I have to go out and do outreach to the different groups that are here on campus, the groups that are part of the Pride Center, the undocumented students, and other students on campus that have been marginalized and have had bad experiences with the police. So as I continue to do the outreach, I'm sure that I'll be able to hear honest, tough comments about how they feel and the experiences that they've had outside of CSUN that they bring into the campus, that as a police department we have to accept, and we have to do our work and be able to be partners. And I really believe that we can do that. I have personal experiences that have been negative with police departments. I grew up in the early 80s and 90s in public housing, and those experiences were not good at all. But at the same time, I do believe that in my position, not being a police officer within the Department of Police Services, I have an opportunity to make a difference, and that's what I want to do. And so as the work continues and we get to hear the honest truth from students, faculty, and staff, that's information that is extremely valuable because it will lead to training. It will lead to hopefully people understanding that we can work together, but it's going to take time.
And then, Sennett, what would you tell to families that have had experiences? As you mentioned, he also had negative experiences. But now we're creating the space for people to come forward and point out, like, hey, these are some things that we would like to see progress in, so that you guys could better serve the community. What would you tell to those family, students, or whoever's out there that's a little bit weary of approaching them and letting them know their thoughts?
I'm going to be frank in that their thoughts and concerns are incredibly valid and come from, in all these circumstances, their own experiences. I'm not going to be the one to tell anybody that the police are there to protect them. I personally don't believe that. The history of police is slave patrol. And so I think all that we've actually seen through body cam footage and through people's footage, starting at Rodney King, which was a guy on a handheld camera who originally sent that video to the police didn't want it. With police in general, from inception to today, there is no accountability. The very few times police are held accountable, it's an exception to the rule. It's less than 1% of the time, and that's when they're caught doing actually illegal things, despite breaking our constitutional rights and freedoms. So it's a tricky thing. I don't have a positive thing to say. I don't think coffee with the cop makes anything better for the community. Over 50% of all of our tax dollars goes to the police. I don't believe the police are equipped enough, trained enough to handle all these issues. And I want to be clear, that doesn't mean I believe police need more training. I think the community needs more resources. And I think it's not that I'm saying, I think that just as a community and people, we need to really understand that less police does not mean we are less safe, and we don't need more police to be more safe.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned that it's not more training, that it needs more resources. Here we have somebody who I'm sure would be open to hear, what do you mean by more resources? What resources would the community need to bring the police, the law enforcement, and them together?
Right, so I'm definitely not talking about more resources for the police. I'm talking about resources for a community. An example is I actually grew up in Northridge. Here we're at CSUN, right? I grew up in Northridge, and the community I grew up in was well resourced, right? We had parks available. We had the neighbors weren't stealing things. There's things that a well-resourced community has, and then there's crimes that don't exist in those communities. They actually just don't exist. There's certain crimes that only exist in some communities, and those are communities that have a lack of resources. when again, most of the money is going to police and the police are called and someone with a gun is showing up to suicide, drug overdose, homeless situations, I don't believe it's serving anybody in the community. I think we need to reallocate resources and redefine what safety means for all of us.
So, I'm sorry, I may have missed it, but we're talking about adding more resources to the community. What, if you were to give 2 examples of what these resources would look like, what would they be?
Education would be a simple one in communities that don't have it, that don't have daycares, that don't have parks and recreation. That's what I would advise money from policing going towards these other communities.
So this brings us to a little bit in the territory of cultural differences. Every city that you're in, you're going to grow up having those different resources. When it comes to education, having different educational backgrounds, open to that. Do you see the cultural differences as an impact, or that having different types of education could potentially allow for the community to have a better understanding of what role law enforcement plays in?
Well, I think the understanding from the community is essential, but communities are extremely valuable. And there's a lot that goes on in our communities in terms of resources that are needed. Sennett said something that I agree with him, that I believe that education is a key part of ensuring that our communities become stronger. And that's why I believe that it is important for the Department of Police Services here at CSUN to be able to create safety in the campus for all students, from all cultures, from all genders. We have to do a better job in terms of understanding what those needs are. And he's absolutely right that the communities outside of CSUN and here at CSUN have a lot of valuable aspects to them. We have a lot of students here that are coming from communities that have a lot of great things happening in them but are not recognized. And I truly, truly believe, again, growing up in public housing my whole life, that some of the things that he said are true, that even in those environments, we have to give our students a chance. We have to give our communities the resources that they need to be able to have their kids come to a campus like CSUN with so many great resources. There's mental health resources, there's counselors here, there's many resources that we as a police department have to play a role in connecting the students with, because that's what's gonna strengthen the experience here at CSUN, and that's what's gonna cause for more students to graduate. I really believe in that, and it's part of my work, and I'm determined to be able to make those connections for the entire community here on this campus.
Sennett, Catarino, thank you so much for being here and having this discussion. We could really go on for a few other hours. Unfortunately, we just don't have the time. Thank you for watching On Point.